You're listening to a very special extended interview edition of Audible Sounds on 88.3 WRCT. And if you're listening to this, that means you've come here on your own, so thank you, listener, for supporting the show both online and off. So let's get to the interview. This week I sat down with Edward Banchs, researcher, journalist, and author of Scream For Me Africa, as well as Heavy Metal Africa. I first encountered Edward when I read one of his articles on the subject in Public Source, and I knew I just had to speak with him. And of course, I am joined once again by my good friend and expert in all things heavy metal, Frankie Mitchell. And I gotta say, I learned quite a bit in this interview. Edward is a very well-traveled journalist with a lot of very interesting stories. Here now is our interview with Edward Banchs, author of Scream For Me Africa. Hello and welcome to yet another Audible interview. I'm once again joined by Frankie Mitchell.
Hi, everybody.
And today we're speaking with Edward Banchs. Thank you so much for being here, Edward.
Well, thanks for having me. This is a real pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, and you are the author of the books Heavy Metal Africa and Scream For Me Africa.
Yes.
So you've written two books about a specific music genre and a specific continent.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess I should start by asking what is your history with Africa and the music scene there?
Oh, yeah. I get asked that a lot. It's fair. I have no direct connection, I guess, other to Africa, other than the connection we all do is having ancestors from Africa, right? But I just was really interested in learning more about Africa sometime in my mid-20s. I was confused as to what I wanted to study at college, so I learned that you can study Africa at college because I just thought it was the place of the world I knew the least about, and I didn't really care to see it as a stereotype so much. So I started to dig in a bit more, and that's it. Really, my interest in Africa came from the fact that I knew nothing about it. Now I know quite a lot about it. Yeah.
So what is your educational background? This is
Oh,
probably
yeah.
Googleable. I'm sure that I could have looked it up, but
No, it's all right. I have a bachelor, a BA from Florida Atlantic, but I have it's political science and a social science degree with a minor in biological anthropology, and I have an MA in African Studies from the University of London School of Oriental and African Studies. There, when I lived in London, that I got really immersed in the metal scene there because I'm just, I make no mis it's not a secret. I'm a metalhead. That ever since I was in grade school, I really loved metal. Like it was it. It started with glam metal. That was my entryway into I sing a Poison video on MTV. It's led me into wow, there's more music that sounds like this. That's even faster and more guitars and vocals are angrier. But I got immersed in the London metal scene there, and a friend of mine there asked me what I knew about metal in Africa since I was living in London studying Africa. I said, well, I don't know much about metal in Africa. And the result is my first book. I answered his question.
did you in
Good job.
the educational, in academia, did you ever encounter any kind of pushback to covering metal at all? I myself, I have a bachelor's in English and then a master's in comparative literature, and I would end up writing about I focused on South American stuff usually.
Yeah.
And so if I was writing about, Sarcophago or something, people would be like, oh, okay, it's Frankie writing about death metal again. Did you
Yeah.
encounter anything like that?
No, well, when I was doing my academic work, I focused on post-colonial politics, like nation building, democracy, how fickle democracy could be, things like that. I stuck just to the academic stuff, what I wanted to study, which was politics and how colonialism shaped the modern African continent. Now, since I published my first book, I don't know if you know this, there's a world of academic scholarship. There's the International Society of Metal Music Studies, which is a academic organization of metal music scholars. We host conferences, biannual conferences. I was just at the one in Montreal. Since then, I've gotten more involved in metal academia. My new book is actually peer-reviewed. It's published to an academic press. I've published, I think, somewhere around 10 articles now in academic journals about metal in Africa. I've given numerous papers at conferences now. So now there's been a whole world of seeing academia embrace heavy metal, because most of the scholars that have gotten into this were metalheads who also were just working in other fields, who've integrated metal into their field, and now it's growing. That's the way most scholars are getting published now. And we have various books on the subject through various disciplines of academia, especially English is a big one. The head of the Metal Music Societies now is at University of Dayton. He's an English professor, and he teaches a class on metal writing. Like they have to read books about metal and incorporate that into writing. And some of these are freshman undergraduate, first level, like they're learning writing through metal. Others, it gets to graduate level too. So it's actually pretty exciting to watch it grow. I wish I would have done this though, as even my professor who I still talk to at University of London, who was my dissertation supervisor, says you could have done like the politics of heavy metal in apartheid South Africa. Like that would have been a cool paper.
Yeah, definitely.
Would have been an awesome paper.
I turned that idea into a chapter in my new book.
Metal in academia, it sounds weird when you say it out loud, but I think anybody who's, hip to the genre knows that there's a big intersection between abrasive music and just nerddom and obsession.
Yeah, I'm still in touch with a lot of people. It's only growing. As of now, I guess I'm a co-editor of one of the journals, associate editor of one of the Metal Music Studies journal. Look, I did a presentation this week through MIT. I did it virtually. I didn't travel, but I traveled to Miami University in Ohio, just because I'm based in Pittsburgh, if anyone doesn't know. I traveled to Miami University in Ohio in November, gave a lecture there to over 200 students. The class is actually about metal and culture, and the students there, undergraduate students, learn about how cultures interact with, or how heavy metal acts within cultures, usually outside of it was always usually in the West, but now that I have kind of helped contribute to a growing field of academia, and there's another colleague of mine named Nelson Veraz Diaz who does metal in Latin America. There's Mark Levine who does metal in the Middle East. So like we're starting to see how metal interacts with cultures in the quote unquote global South, and it's kind of become like this comparative studies thing that's going on. So yeah, it's actually really cool to see this. If anything, it's at least helping change the dialogue as to how metal fans are embracing heavy metal. We get to leave the North America for a change or Europe.
All right. Well, you've brought some music with you. First one up is Skinflint, and the track is Iron Pierced King. And looking at the artwork, I'm guessing this king has been pierced by maybe an Iron Maiden.
Yeah, man. Yeah, there's a little Iron Maiden worship going on with that band. Great band, though. They're out of Botswana, out of the capital city. I spent some time with them. It's in my first book. I spent a few weeks with them on their farm.
Really? They have a farm?
Yeah, two of the band members lived on adjacent farms, and they rehearsed right there, right in the middle of nowhere. Like it's the desert. It's rugged, like mountainous desert, dry land. But they still have a farm, and it was awesome because they could be as loud as they want. There was no one around.
I was gonna say that sounds like an awesome concert.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's great. Good people.
What type of farm was it?
They grew spinach, watermelon, and something else. They were like citrus trees.
Cool. All right. Well, here's the Iron Pierced King by Skinflint.
Our souls will be cursed. Now the king's head and the trophy. Now the kingdom is ours. Now the people for slavery. Now the souls will be cursed. Now the king's head and the trophy.
I love that track.
Yeah, to me it's like an anthem of African heavy metal. It was one of the first heavy metal songs I heard from Africa and that one just really just stuck with me almost the first time I heard it. That band's actually doing quite well for themselves. They're signed to a label now out of the United Kingdom, and they've done touring around their releases for that label. So they've been here to the United States now twice. They did a 2-week run with Soulfly on 2 separate occasions.
Oh wow.
I've had the chance to see them here in Pittsburgh now twice. There's actually been, since I started all this, I don't think I'm not trying to take any credit for this, but there's been a few African acts that have gotten signed and been able to do some touring. So a band from Kenya called Duma has also been through the United States. A band from South Africa.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love Duma.
Vulvodynia. Yeah, Duma's cool. Martin and I chat a lot still. But Vulvodynia, also from South Africa, has been through the United States now numerous times. I mean, they've just become a global band by this point.
I didn't even know they were from South Africa.
Yeah, they're from Johannesburg. I've been to I've met a few of those band members. I stayed at one of he's not in the band anymore, the bass player, but his house in Johannesburg, and he and his brother were in another band in South Africa. Actually, ironically, the interesting thing to correlate Vulvodynia to Skinflint is that the first thing that we really got to see of global metal is African heavy metal was a photo set that came from out of Vice magazine from a photographer named Frank Marshall. First time he ever went to Botswana, he's from South Africa. The first time he ever went to Botswana was with a heavy metal band from South Africa called Roots. RHUTZ. You know, one of those band members actually was was a part of Vulvodynia for some time. Just kind of just kept linking its way through. That really helped me a bit more to understand the heavy metal scene there, because they have such a visual image, like these like cowboy image there in Botswana. So it's pretty cool to actually get in a little better with them and get to know them and see what the Botswana scene was all about.
What is it about that? Why do you think they adopted the cowboy look?
They have a really big agricultural economy. Botswana is by no means a poor nation. It's not a doesn't fall into the purview of anything that people imagine as a stereotypical African country. It's actually fairly well developed. It's fairly wealthy. The citizens of that country do well. There's very little poverty. But they have a big agricultural industry there, and that's part of it. Beef is everywhere. You know that if New Zealand has what 6 sheep for every person, that's kind of what there's like 3 cows per person in Botswana. It's just a big part of their identity. Cattle's everywhere. So leather is synonymous with cattle. The imagery that came from the early rockers, like Judas Priest and Motorhead, of seeing them in leather, just kind of became a norm for them, you know? And the cowboy hats, so apparently there's a story of a guy that showed up to a metal gig there some time ago on horseback, full leather with a cowboy hat, and they just thought that was, you know, I don't know, that's an urban legend. Yeah, the only thing I can really associate with is that cattle industry is big in Botswana. Judas Priest and Motorhead and all these other early bands all wore leather, so 1 + 1 = 2.
I definitely choose to believe that the cowboy, the guy showing up on the horse, is true.
I'm gonna go with that. Let's just say that's it. Some badass John Wayne style guy showed up to a metal gig on the horse, tied the horse up there, went in, rocked out, and rode home.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be like when punks like bring dogs to gigs here. Like it's the same thing, just much bigger animal.
Yeah.
You brought up, Judas Priest and everything. I compared that last track to Iron Maiden. You talked about getting into metal with Poison. That was an era where I think heavy metal was a little more vague, like the definition. And I was going to ask, how is metal perceived in other countries? Do they have like hang-ups about genre? Or is there all the hair splitting? Is it similar or is it different?
You mean amongst fans or amongst society as a whole? Amongst society as a whole, it's not really seen in a positive light. Amongst fans, yeah, there's still amongst fans, it's nuanced where there's a deep and immersive metal scene. All right, South Africa has a deep and immersive metal scene. Most of the scenes, like Botswana does, but most of the scenes are kind of young still. So there's no, once metal becomes kind of ingrained, can they start to have the nuanced debate over things? And that's when you start to see the subgenre splitting. You know, there's black metal bands in South Africa. I don't think you're going to have black metal bands unless you have a deeply immersed metal scene, because that's like the only genre of metal that's actually born from heavy metal itself. So you're not going to have that. You don't really see that much in many places. So I'm a big fan of like all metal. I like black metal. I like doom metal. I like stoner metal. I like the stuff that kind of gets in between shoegaze and things like, Alcest and whatnot. I like Death Heaven a lot. I like American hardcore too. So like the underground culture is something that most metal bands in Africa, most African countries still don't get. They still don't understand. I would wear a Converge shirt, a lot. The iconic Jane Doe Converge shirt. And most of the time that just kind of went unnoticed. Unless I was in South Africa, and they were like, yeah, we've been trying to get Converge to come here for years. But other than that, you go to Kenya and they're like, what is that? Like, oh, it's a band that I really like. So, it's a good way to me, not kind of speak down on, but it's like, well, let's listen to some of my favorite bands and see if you guys can kind of jive with this, There was a guy in Kenya, for example, that had the last trip I took to Kenya was 2019, and he had recently discovered Catatonia. It's another one of my favorite bands. It's a band from Sweden, kind of a dark, melancholy metal band. And that to him was like kind of eye-opening. He's like, I didn't know metal can do this. Like, yeah. So we got into some deeper conversations about other bands that I felt played what I guess could be called melancholia metal. So yeah, that's just getting there as time goes on, But the internet has really neutralized most of this. It's really just kind of shattered all the walls. Now it's easier for people to access new bands and new sounds.
All right, moving on, we got Deity's Muse.
Yeah, this is a rock band. This isn't really a metal band. It's just a hard rock band, but I really like them. They're really good people, but I like this kind of progressive kind of hard rock thing that's going on here.
All right, and here's the track, Satellites.
It's hard to change the minds made up.
And that was Satellites by Deity's Muse.
Where is that band from?
They're from Johannesburg.
That makes sense. I was going to say, because you said other places hadn't heard of Converge or things like that. So, it makes sense because that's a very kind of like modern sounding prog kind of tune. It sounds like something, that a band here could have put out yesterday.
Yeah, no, yeah, they got me into a band called Carnival, which I really like, an Australian band, and they're really big fans of them. But like that's that sort of, what's the other band? Dead Letter Circus, things, they got me like there's this whole world of Australian progressive hard rock that they opened me up to. Like, oh.
So moving on, I'm gonna need help with this nickname for sure.
Oh, is it Arcane Astro Folklore?
With the track "Walk With Us," this band is a little different than the last one. Can you tell us a little bit about where they're from?
They're from Lome, Togo, in West Africa. Togo is a small country, a small sliver of a country that colonially was referred to as the slave coast. It goes to show you, colonial governments weren't shy about their intentions. They had the Ivory Coast, they had the Gold Coast, they had the Slave Coast. It's the truth that most Black Americans' ancestors come from right where they are. They use that imagery a lot in their videos. You see them like they wear like chains, like bound up, and they break them apart, things like that. It's a remarkable band. This is a band that has actually taken. This is what we call the decolonization approach. Like they have decided to. They loved heavy metal so much, but they wondered what else they can do. How else can they engage with their favorite style of music? So they brought in a traditional musician. He plays instruments that are indigenous to Togo, and they use sounds indigenous to their country. And they perform sometimes in English, sometimes in French, which is the colonial language that's still widely spoken in their country. But they perform primarily in a language called Uwe, spelled E-W-E, which is their home language. It's common in Africa. You speak a home language, then you speak your main language. So within your home, you speak that language. But that was their pre-colonial language, and they used their music and their lyrics to address pre-colonial themes. To kind of step away. Most of it has to do with pertains to their culture, with their interactions with the environment, with how humans now in the modern world are not having a friendly relationship with planet Earth, which they feel that in their culture in Uwe, Earth and man are connected. They're one. And so they feel that that's been lost. And this is a message. Most of their music is a message to man now. It's a kind of a tragic story in a way, because we in the West are having the biggest impact on how planet Earth has been changing. Africans are the least, they contribute the least to climate change. And they're the ones being affected by it the most. They're the ones who see their lakes dry up. They're the ones that are seeing their coastlines erode more than us. And we tend to dump all of our stuff, our electronics, all our excess waste tend to find its way to African shores on purpose sometimes. They have e-waste dumps where the old laptops and computers are found in slums, piled high, so they can break them apart for some of the rare earth materials that are still in our computers and discard them, and then they take them and melt them down and sell them, whatever pennies on the dollar. So yeah, it's kind of tragic in many ways how it all kind of comes back around. This isn't lost on anyone, so this band is just remarkable. They're doing great things. And, they make you engage with the music differently. When you have different sounds like that, when you're hearing music performed in a language you've never heard before, it kind of forces you to ask more critical questions. It kind of forces you to ask what they're saying, kind of forces you to think differently about what you're hearing, even though it is heavy metal, And good for them. This is a single that they released. They just got signed to a label from Germany, I believe, or France. They started to go play in Europe now. They played some festivals in 2023 and 2022. So good things are on the horizon for them, for sure.
Excellent. Well, this is the track "Walk With Us."
Nice.
Let's walk with us. I had one more question about them, and I was curious if you knew anything about this. We already talked about genre that comes up a lot on this show, and like you said, the internet has kind of changed what genre means to people. Used to be just a way of selling things to people, and now it's a way for bands to define themselves. See, they take that seriously or not, but this band has on their genre tag on Bandcamp Azra Folklore. I was curious if that meant anything to you, if you knew anything about that.
That's on their genre tag. I think if I'm not, I think that may mean warrior in their language. You know what? I think he told me that before. When I first met him and I spent time with them in their country, they were just called Arcan.
Okay.
And Arcan means nothing. It's just a word. It actually means nothing. Yeah. And as for folklore, they added to the end of that, and I think it means warrior. Warrior is very much a central part of the identity of Uwe, tradition and history. There's a song on their first album called The Warrior Song. The album's called Warrior Song. There's a warrior depicted on the album cover for their first album. When they begin performing their set, they kind of stand. There's 5 members in the band, but 4 of them up front with microphones are performing a chant. Now, the guy playing the acoustic drums doesn't have a microphone, but they're performing a chant in Uwe, summoning the warriors, the spirits of their ancestors to come and perform with them that night, to be in the audience, to be a part of the room that night. Again, for us to connect back to Earth. So it's actually pretty powerful to watch them live. And so I think that's probably why they do that. It's kind of, but marketing, you're right. Marketing is different. I don't know if that was their idea or someone else's.
Well, if you look up Azra Folklore on Bandcamp, they're the only band, so that does make sense.
Maybe it makes sense. Yeah. I think the Arcan, they added that because I think there was someone else they learned was called Arcan. I mean, they put ARKA''N, but it just didn't seem to, you know how it is now with streaming services and stuff. You got to make yourself stand out a bit more. And the idea of genre, though, is weird because it's like genres were created by labels as a marketing tool. So
exactly.
Yeah, so it's kind of weird that's like a thing now. But yeah, whatever. You got to make your music stand out somehow. Otherwise, you'll get lost. I mean, there's tons of bands now.
Looking at their Bandcamp now, they actually have like their little bio thing. It says the band's originality stems from their music as Core, which is a fusion of hard rock and metal and African mystic and warrior music. So I guess that's their little genre,
Nice.
Warrior, warrior definition. Yeah, I mean, it's really just groove metal. I mean, we had a lot of talks to them. Yeah, we would jam out to Meshuggah and Gojira a lot. I remember I had whatever the name of the recent Tool album is. I forget. It took forever for them to release it. Now it's been like 5 years. I already forget what it's called.
I can see the cover and I can't think of the name.
But the recent Tool album, it came out while I was over there, and I had it on my computer. It had just come out, right? And I had it downloaded on my computer. And I remember they plugged it into the rehearsal space, like PA, and we sat down like collectively. We like played it, and it's like 80 minutes long album, and they sat there like silently listening to every single note. And then when it was done, they're like, "Can you play it again, please?" Like, sure. So that was like a good way to spend the whole afternoon, like. But it was neat because I gained a lot from them because West Africa, the sounds of the music is so rich and there's so much, the local music that. They said that they listened to Tool and they realized it said this drummer is playing our music. I was like, well, that's cool. They were counting like everything out with them. It's like, this isn't 6/8 time signature. That's African beat. I'm like, yeah, I guess it is. Yeah, a lot of Africans playing 6/8 time because that's just traditional African beat. That was eye-opening for me. Like I learned a lot more about. I mean, music has always just been kind of a line anyway. That's just kind of connected itself around the world,
We have Dividing the Element with the track, and now I'm going to need help with the track name on this one.
I have a hard time with this too. It's in the Shona language. Yeah, he says it a lot in the song. But they're from the capital of Zimbabwe, Harare, and this is a song about kind of keeping your head up throughout adversity. Always looking forward. And I'll explain why, I guess, after the song.
Well, here's Dividing the Element.
Good tune there. That's also performed in Shona, right? So that's another song that's from an African band performed in a language that's, widely spoken pre-colonially. The language of Zimbabwe is English, but that's a primarily white band too. It just kind of shows you what the post-colonial Africa is, where it's not uncommon to have the descendants of the colonizers settle there for quite some time, but just speaking this language and whatnot. It's a difficult country, Zimbabwe. It's my favorite country in Africa. It has by far, but it's difficult because it's under even Togo too is the same way, but it's a politically restrictive country. It's an authoritarian state, but Zimbabwe famously went through some really troubled times here in the early 2000s, with the inflation rate being amongst probably the worst in history. It was so bad where I was there in 2007, the first time, where you would go buy a cup of coffee at this incredible price, but by the time you had gone to go get a refill, it had tripled in price.
No kidding.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was pretty bad. I remember just taking South African rands or American dollars, and everything was usually neutral. You just give me $5 and you can have all the coffee you want. But it was hard to even get goods. It was just ridiculous what happened. But that was from the economic side. They had a massive economic collapse, but they had politically there's no room for dissent in that country. You can't criticize the government. There's no free press. Just go buy a newspaper there and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. I was very careful not to take photos in public spaces. All the interviews I did with musicians, we did behind the wall in some way, shape, or form. I wasn't doing interviews in public in cafes or anything like that, like I did in some countries. So that's what this band, that's where they find themselves in that situation with that troubled everything. So that song it publicly is just about kind of keeping your head up and rising through, but it's really a call for Zimbabweans to just say, we're better than this. We're going to get through this. Eventually things will be better. We're all in this right now. We're all in this struggle together. Former dictator there, Robert Mugabe, tried so hard to divide the population of black and white Zimbabweans and, tried to get everyone to hate white people, resent them for a lot of the things that they feel was happening. But it was really him, and everything backfired. Like, if anything, the country is more unified than ever before because everyone struggles to get food. Everyone's struggling with the economy. Everyone was struggling with the political situation. When everyone struggles together, they tend to help each other, you know? So, a remarkable, remarkable country.
I was gonna ask, you said it was your favorite. So what is it about the place that makes it your favorite?
The people are just absolutely brilliant. They're absolutely, absolutely wonderful. You know, it's easy to see how a dictator can take advantage of a situation whenever you have people that are just as who they are, just beautiful and kind, and you know, they're no one's out to hurt anyone. They're there to look out after each other, to take care of each other. I don't know, it's hard to put it into words. It's just a feeling that I have. There's only two times I've ever really gotten emotional after leaving a place, and it was Zimbabwe, and the other one was Madagascar. Zimbabwe, I must also say, is just stunning geographically too. But yeah, but those two countries, and Madagascar and Zimbabwe, ironically, are like two of the poorest countries. Kind of just goes to show sometimes, you know, there's resilience. I'm not, you know, exoticizing people and saying that they're happier when they're poor. They're not. They're miserable. No one wants to be poor in this world. You want everything to no. Everyone wants to live the way we do. That's just it's true. Right? I've seen it. I've heard it. Everyone always says we want what you have, and I don't mean we as in Americans. I mean we as in the West. But yeah, they want functioning toilets. They want steady electricity. They want their kids to be able to go to school. They want to be able to take a bus to places on time and all these things. You know, they want to be able to walk into a grocery store and actually have food. And that's just, I don't know. I guess I'm kind of at a loss for words even thinking about it. Like, I need to get back, but it's, you know, as difficult as I think it will be always to go back to see it all. But once you're just in there for a few weeks, you're just kind of get sucked into that world, and it's hard to leave.
So with a band like that, like you know, their lyrical themes on Metal Archives are listed as like, you know, Zimbabwean history and kind of things like that. So like writing about that topic in that country, like under such a repressive government, like do they, you know, do they have to be like vague in their lyrics as to what they're saying? Is it more kind of like a general, you know, kind of call for like, you know, unity? Like do you know what exactly they're kind of like singing about, or if they're getting any like pushback from the government?
No, they haven't gotten pushback, as far as I know. I mean, it's to say the government, are they sitting down listening to heavy metal bands?
Yeah.
It's also part of the discussion. There's punk band there that you know, it was like, are they? But you know, the bands are just careful to avoid it all, just not only for themselves but for their families and for anyone who would potentially go to these concerts. They are always like, when you live under an authoritarian state, you have fear. There's always this level of fear that kind of resonates throughout everything. Always afraid that someone even in the audience is there from the government, or that the government may be outside watching. It's always like a real fear, because this has happened. Musicians in Zimbabwe famously have been exiled. Musicians in Zimbabwe have mysteriously, like famously, have, there's a case of one just mysteriously dying after writing a song where he criticized the government. Like one day, you know, then he just turns up dead like a week later. So you have to be a little subversive if you are going to do that. This is something that bands South Africa did during the apartheid era. That was also a really repressive police state, really very oppressive, brutal police state. You know, they learned it. They learned just from doing certain things that you can hide your messages in playful ways if you can do that. I don't know. I never got that vibe from Dividing the Element. They always just said their music was about kind of optimism and keeping up things. And yeah, there's aspects of Zimbabwean history and whatnot that comes through too. But yeah, when I went to Kenya the first time, they were supposed to have a huge Nairobi metal festival, but there was an attack on a shopping mall there, and there's like hundreds of people that were killed by these insurgents that were in Nairobi, and they completely f***ed up the psyche of like the metal scenes there, because the government even stepped in and says, you're not having this concert anymore because they're after you.
Jesus.
And that's when I landed there. I got there. They were like, yeah, we can't do this. Like, we're like literally scared shitless of what's going to happen to us. Like, so we're just not going to have this concert. I'm like, well, all right, so I'll spend a few weeks with you guys anyway, you know? You can see how shaky everyone was after all that. It's real, man. It's real. In 2011, I traveled to Israel to visit a friend with the intention of crossing into Egypt to kind of get this going. And I had already reached out to Egyptian musicians, and you know, I was like, all right, cool. So really metal bands in Egypt. So I said, well, this would be a good place to start. There's you know, but then the Arab Spring kind of happened. Then there was that. I wish I had my old BlackBerry still, because it was that message that came in from someone in Egypt that says, we cannot guarantee your safety.
Like, Jesus.
I was like, yeah. I mean, there's a border town in Israel called Eilat, right at the Sinai Peninsula. It's like, yeah, I didn't know there's probably more vacation-y stuff in the Sinai, but it's kind of neat to think, kind of weird to think that like 5 hours away by bus ride is complete chaos. Here in this part of Egypt, business as usual. I didn't go, to say the least. I just ended up hanging around in Tel Aviv for some time, which was actually really cool. So good metal scene there. It's the complete opposite of any other country in the Middle East. It's more what we're used to, yeah. I mean, there's metal bars. Like, there's no metal bars anywhere else in the Middle East.
I think off the top of my head, the only Israeli bands, well, I guess at least one isn't Israeli anymore, is like Melakesh, and then
Yeah.
I think Orphan Land, right?
Orphan Land's awesome. Yeah, I met the bass player. He owns a record shop in Tel Aviv, an all metal record store. And I went in there once, and unbeknownst to me, the guy, he was behind the counter. We were just talking about like Israeli metal. Actually, metal throughout the Middle East too. And he was telling me about other bands there. They all talk to them. They're like, yeah, we hate Israel, quote unquote, but then they're like all in awe of what Orphan Land can do. Like, you guys can do this in your country. We can't. You guys get to tour Europe. We can't. All these things. Like, yeah, I was like, we wish we could just play with you there, but we can't. He was funny because I was like, well, what's your best, or what's your favorite album from an Israeli band? And he pointed to an Orphan Land record. He's like, that's when the band thought they would be at the gates. And everyone in the store started laughing. I was like, oh, okay. And unbeknownst to me afterwards, like, idiot. Like, that's the bass player in the band, man. That's his job.
That's funny.
Yeah, who's another band there? I can't remember. That's the band. I don't know if you know the story about like who's it, Burzum in Norway. He sent them, they were in touch with them, and they were like, yeah, your music's really good, but it turns out you're from Israel, so I hate you.
Oh, Jesus.
The guy was sitting there in his apartment in Israel, and he gets a knock on the door, and it was someone from the IDF, and they were like, who do you know in Norway? He's like, well, no one. He's like, oh, okay, because there's a bomb that was addressed to you from Norway. We just intercepted it.
Jesus.
Like,
Whoa.
he's like, yeah, it was a letter bomb. And it turns out it was from a Norwegian black metaler, and it was probably him.
I could certainly see it.
They were like,
a compliment and then a bomb.
Yeah, you get the compliment. Your music's good, but also you're Jewish, so we hate you. Orphan Land's actually really good. There's a band from Tunisia also, along the lines of Orphan Land, called Mirath. I don't know, Myrath. Mirath is like a progressive metal band that has like a kind of like the way you heard Arcan, Artists for Folklore. They have like that traditional thing going on with like Tunisian like pre-colonial instrumentation, and it sounds Arab. They definitely place where they are. Like Orphan Land does the same sort of thing, but these guys do it in Arabic and they're Tunisian. It's pretty cool. I believe the two bands have toured together before too, which they can't do that. It doesn't matter what Orphan Land does, but Tunisia has no diplomatic relations with Israel, so they were, it was a taboo tour, and I think they did it anyway. But it was kind of cool to see that. But Marath, if you like Orphan Land, check them out. They've come to America several times to play that. I think it's Power Prog or Prog USA in Atlanta. And they've done touring around the world. So, I mean, I forget what label released them, because Orphan Land was on Century Media. Marath was on one of the subsidiaries, like Inside Out or something. Inside Out.
It says Ear Music now, which I've never heard of.
Yeah, I don't know. Inside Out must have released it. That's a Pittsburgh-based label. I don't know if you knew that.
No, that's cool.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, look, it's pretty rich, some of those countries up there. Morocco had a festival. Algeria has a band that's really good, Lelahel. Yeah, I wanted to go there. They actually invited me to come and stay with them for a bit. Libya was like a dark space. Like, we didn't know what was happening in Libya. And since Gaddafi's kind of gone, turns out there is metal there, but I think they're still kind of furtive. They're still kind of on the DL. Hopefully that changes. From a history perspective, Libya would be incredible to go to.
I was going to say, Libya has some really awesome music. I'd love to see what they do with heavy metal.
Yeah, I still dream of that. Going into Morocco and just going all the way right across North Africa through all those countries, Tunisia, Algeria, Libya, Egypt, taking my time. It'd be cool to do all that as a road trip. And then getting back into Israel, it'd be cool that way. That way I can have a cold beer when I'm done. Not complaining.
We still got one track left. If you want to listen, we could just keep going. This is great.
Oh yeah, let's go. What's the last track? I think is it Last Year's Tragedy?
It is Last Year's Tragedy, and I was going to say that is the name. And the track is Elephant in the Room.
Year's Tragedy is from Nairobi, Kenya, and that song was recorded live in Johannesburg. They played a show in South Africa. Oh, when was that? Last year, 2022 maybe? Part of like this Wacken metal battle. The Wacken Metal Festival in Germany is the biggest metal festival in the world, right? 80,000 people attend this every year, every summer. And then they have these regional battles to try to get bands from all over the world to play there on these. And they have a contest to see what band will go there. And it used to be from South Africa, but now they've expanded it to other African countries. So the South African battle is invited for other bands from Africa to come and play, and that's where they recorded that at. So it was a good opportunity for them anyway, because at least it's a gig in Johannesburg, you know. So
Did they get to do like Vakken? Is it
no, it was a
like a
South
competition
African
where you
band. It was a South
went?
African band that went. Yeah, Wacken has been done by Overthrust from Botswana on their own. I think they played it once or twice already, but several South African bands have played it now, and it's been pretty cool to watch. You know, it's getting there. There's been a band from Egypt too, Crescent, that has played it also. So, but yeah, that band is pretty cool. They've been around for quite some time, and they write songs. See, they confront some of the issues that have faced the modern Kenyan state in some regards, which is like this polarizing, this ethnic cleavages. So they had an election 2008 that really just drove the country apart, and it was resulted in some horrible violence. Like 1,000 people dead, tens of thousands displaced from their homes because they contested election results that were drawn on ethnic groups based on the two candidates that ran for president, and that kind of divided. You know, that was still a scar. Uh, Very much. It's like the post-colonial Kenya is still very much scarred from what this divide and rule that the colonial government did, which was, you know, favor certain ethnic groups and try to pit them against others. It's a classic technique. That's the modern Kenya now. That's where the Kenyan state finds itself today. So the band is now what, 6-piece? They were 5-piece before, but now they're 6 or 7 now. Jeez, I forget. They added someone else, but they're all of different ethnic groups. The band members, you know. So that's kind of what a lot of their music is about uniting around this, like having music be your tribe. We're metalheads now. We can unite around together this, and we can move forward from it. They use their music to ask critical questions about these ethnic divisions, and they use their music to ask people to consider something else, to move on from it. And, you know, because it's a very true reality, even in Kenya today, that people are culture raised. There's 42 ethnic groups there. There's over 42 languages spoken in the country. Is the official language. Swahili is also widely spoken. That does, you know, that's sort of like a language that's not any of the other home languages. So English show is important for them to perform in, because if anything, you know, they're not pushing anyone away because of that. So it's a wonderful thing, you know. But they're a good band. They're good guys. They've been at it for quite some time now. So, you know, let's see if maybe some things can start to turn their way generously, you know. But yeah, that's one of their newer songs too. So it's good to see that they move forward with some new music.
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, regarding kind of African scenes broadly, if you know, like in America, you always get, like, now obviously it's kind of fractured, especially in like black metal, because you have like NSBM being a thing, and then you have leftists pushing back against it. But like, I saw Exodus, the '80s thrash band, a few months ago, and like there was still this idea, like in their performance, that you get in '80s bands where it's like, we're a metal brotherhood, like we're a family, you know. And like the vocalist was yelling, like, you know, if you see someone fall down, you pick them up because that's your brother in the pit, like that's your sister. And I was wondering if that type of kind of like old school camaraderie is still present in the African scenes, especially where you may have these kind of divisions along, you know,
Yeah,
ethnic lines or like political lines.
yeah, because it's tight knit. Look, metal got you into the room, and that's how you start your conversation.
Mhm.
I wouldn't say that most of these scenes in Africa are leftist, uh,
Mhm.
because these countries are actually still pretty conservative. You
Yeah.
know, socially, especially. I mean, it's a death sentence to be gay in Kenya. Within the scene, I know that there were people that were open within the scene, and that's where it is. Once the show is over and people leave and go home, they're back in the closet. You know, so that is some level of tolerance. It's only because you can tolerate someone, because if you don't have many, you know, if you want to build a scene, you need more metalheads. Not, you know, you can't push people away. But if anything, that's just been a way of starting a conversation. It's different for me as a Westerner, as an American. You know, I have a brother who's married to a guy. You know, it's like it's no big deal here, but I can't. There's in some countries, I found myself like I can't talk about this. I found in Madagascar, I was with a German scholar who was doing some research there on his own. We met up a lot, and he says, you know, we're different. And one of the guys that was with me, a translator was with me, he was like, that's just like, he's like, oh, gays. Like, what is that? You know, like, oh, dude, we're used to this in the West. It's no big deal. I had people tell me about how they would love to listen to Judas Priest, but they'd be afraid that they would become gay because they listen to Judas Priest. I'm like, it doesn't work that way.
Yes.
But it's just, it was a guy in Madagascar specifically told me once I found out Rob Halford was gay, I threw all the records away. Like, Jesus.
Well, shit.
But that's a conversation point for you to have. Like, you can at least learn some tolerance. But he's not writing about that in their music, you know?
Yeah.
But you can't just like that memory doesn't go away. Like, their songs. Like, you're just not going to lose those songs in your head anyway. So
It
what's
doesn't
the
make
point?
the music less good.
Right. I was just kind of keeping my mouth shut about other gay musicians that were in there. It's like, because you'd be
I was
afraid.
going to say. All right. Well, this has been a very illuminating conversation, Edward. Thank you so much for being with us and doing this.
Oh, this is my pleasure, man. This is great. And it's cool. It's local, I'm glad to be part of it, and thank you for considering me.
Keep doing what you're doing, because I learned a lot.
Oh yeah, thanks. Well, check out my books, man.
I got one in the mail, so.
Oh, right on, man. I'm glad to hear that.
Awesome.
And that was our conversation with Edward Banchs. One more time, Edward's books are Heavy Metal Africa and Scream For Me Africa. I'll leave links down below where you can pick them up. This interview's artists have been Skinflint, Deity's Muse, Arkan Azrafokor, Dividing the Element, and Last Year's Tragedy. Before we go, just one last thank you to Frankie Mitchell for helping me out yet again. For Audible Sounds, I've been John Hartwell. I'll see you all next time.